We tend to think about human innovation today in terms of, these massive leaps. AI, space travel, stuff moving incredibly fast. But I want you to just rewind the clock way, way back, like 2.75 million years back. Forget fire, forget language, definitely forget farming. What if the very first piece of real human tech, the kind of foundation stone, was just a sharp rock, but a carefully made sharp rock?
That simple, sharp rock. Yeah, that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're looking at some really groundbreaking findings from Kenya's Turkana Basin, a place called Tukunan. And these aren't just, random stones. They are 2.75 million-year-old tools, stone tools. And they basically rewrite the story of human problem solving.
2.75 million years. That date just, it really hits you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, for context, we're pushing past the old benchmarks by hundreds of thousands of years here. This isn't just like adding a footnote. It feels more like needing a whole new chapter.
Exactly. And our mission really is to unpack what these artifacts tell us. They might look simple, almost crude at first glance, but they show incredible skill. They reveal this unbroken technological tradition, a really persistent one. And it fundamentally changes how we think about human resilience, suggesting that drive to innovate, to adapt, well, it's possibly the deepest thing about us.
Okay, let's unpack that, because this isn't just about finding older stuff, is it? It's about changing the whole narrative. The idea that our knack for, shared purpose and standardized ways of doing things, it goes back way further than we thought.
Precisely. Let's start with that big number, the dating. These tools from Tukunan, they are firmly dated to 2.75 million years ago. And that pushes back the start of what we call Oldowan technology. That's the first really widespread, kind of standardized stone toolkit by a significant amount.
And Oldowan, just so we're clear, it's not just hitting rocks together randomly, right? It's a specific skill.
Oh, absolutely. It's a recognizable technique. You take a core stone and you strike it in a very particular way to knock off these smaller razor-sharp flakes. The foundational tech toolkit, really.
Okay. And before this discovery, the thinking was different.
Yeah, for a long time, many experts believed that really early tool use was probably quite sporadic, maybe hit or miss. The idea was perhaps one ancient hominin figured something out, made a useful sharp edge, used it, and then maybe that knowledge just died out with them. It wasn't seen as a continuous thing.
Like a momentary flash of genius that didn't quite stick, didn't become culture.
Exactly, a one-off that didn't translate. But the evidence from this site, Tukunan, it really challenges that theory strongly. What we're seeing looks like a tradition, one that lasted for nearly 300,000 years. Continuous use, continuous standardization. As Professor David Braun puts it, when you find the same kind of standardized product in multiple layers of sediment spanning 300 millennia, that's not sporadic. That's sustained knowledge. That's a curriculum.
Wow, 300,000 years. And this is where it starts messing with the sort of textbook story even more, right? The brain size thing.
Right. The brain size paradox. The traditional model, the one many of us learned, suggested that this kind of continuous standardized tool use came later, maybe around 2.4, 2.2 million years ago. After early humans had evolved significantly larger brains, the idea was tools needed bigger brains, and then using tools helped drive brains to get even bigger.
A feedback loop. Smarter brains make tools, tools make brains smarter.
That was the classic evolutionary story. But this deep dive, the findings here, they kind of flip that around. These tools were being made and used consistently before that generally accepted big jump in brain size.
So who was making them then? The individuals crafting these 2.75 million-year-old tools, they had relatively small brains compared to later Homo species like Homo erectus or us.
That seems to be the case. They likely had brains maybe more comparable in size to, say, Australopithecines or very early Homo, so possibly early members of our own genus, Homo, living alongside, or maybe even overlapping with groups like the Australopithecines, Lucy's relatives.
Australopithecines, known for bigger teeth, kind of a mix of ape and human features.
That's them. So the actual tool makers here, they were navigating a pretty complex world, it seems, with a cognitive toolkit we've probably vastly underestimated. It suggests invention wasn't just a result of having a big brain. Maybe it was a strategy, a way of coping, that actually came before the big evolutionary push for larger brains.
Okay, but hang on. If they didn't have those huge frontal lobes we associate with, like complex planning and language, how? How did they store and pass on this knowledge, a complex technique, for 300,000 years? What was the mechanism?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It pushes us away from thinking only about raw intelligence towards thinking about social learning, cultural transmission. So maybe they lacked abstract thought as we know it, but they must have had incredible social abilities, things like really good observational learning, strong motor memory, and some kind of formalized, reliable way to teach the next generation. You know, the exact steps. Find the right stone, know the striking angle, know which flake is useful, which isn't. The fact that it was replicated so consistently for so long points towards something like a robust apprenticeship model, way, way older than we ever imagined.
That's profound. Sophistication wasn't just about brain size, but about cultural staying power.
Yeah.
Okay, let's dig into that continuity. Section 2, the unbroken technological tradition. 300,000 years. I mean, just saying it. Our entire recorded history is what, 5,000 years? Maybe a bit more? Yeah. This tradition lasted 60 times longer than that. It's almost impossible to grasp.
It really is. It wasn't just a neat trick they discovered. It was a core skill, a curriculum that survived immense changes. Environmental changes, social changes. The researchers use phrases like teaching, memory, and shared purpose. That consistency implies all of that. It means these earliest human groups weren't just reacting, they were actively preserving and passing on vital knowledge. They were educating.
So what did they actually find? What were the tools like?
Well, over about 10 years of excavation, they recovered something like 1,300 artifacts. These included the hammerstones the rocks used for striking, the cores, the parent rocks from which flakes were chipped off, and crucially, the sharp flakes themselves. These were the business end, the cutting tools, and they were made using percussion, striking one stone against another, the core stone, intentionally to detach these thin, incredibly sharp pieces.
And you mentioned skill. The researchers highlighted how they chose the raw materials. It wasn't just any rock.
Not at all. Dr. Pelletier-Rollier, one of the researchers, called them extremely astute geologists. That's a great phrase. They weren't just picking up any random cobble. They knew what they were looking for. They sought out the best raw materials. Often things like cryptocrystalline silica, think flint or chert materials that fracture predictably and produce a really sharp, durable edge. They travel along riverbeds, selecting stones specifically for these qualities.
And the detail that they could still cut their fingers on, some of them, after almost 3 million years, that's just, wow.
It says a lot, doesn't it, about the quality of the material they chose and the precision of the technique. That edge was meant to last. And, you know, we should probably touch on how they confirmed the age and the consistency. Getting a date that far back and being confident about it, that takes some serious science.
Yeah, how do they nail down a date like 2.75 million years?
Yeah.
What's the method?
It's not just one method. It's about cross-validation using geology. Really clever stuff. First, they used argon dating. This works on volcanic ash layers. Volcanic eruptions basically create time capsules. Ash traps radioactive isotopes like argon, and scientists can measure the decay to get a very precise date for when that ash layer formed. So they dated the ash layers above and below where the tools were found.
Okay, so that brackets the age.
Exactly. Then they use something called paleomagnetism. This relies on the fact that Earth's magnetic field flips occasionally. North becomes south, south becomes north. When sediments are laid down, tiny magnetic minerals align with the Earth's field at that time. It gets locked in. So they can read the magnetic signature in the layers where the tools were found and match it to the known global timeline of these magnetic reversals. Combining argon dating with paleomagnetism gives you incredibly strong cross-checked confidence in that 2.75 million year date.
Right. So it's not just one technique saying this. It's multiple lines of evidence pointing to the same conclusion.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And that makes the 300,000 years of continuity even more solid. It wasn't just a blip. It was a confirmed long-term pattern.
Absolutely. And finding the same kinds of standardized tools, same techniques, same results in 3 distinct layers of sediment separated by significant time within that 300,000 year window, that really drives home the idea of persistent cultural memory. Generation after generation, they didn't forget how to make the best, sharpest tools for the job.
Okay, so we've got these surprisingly capable, small-brained early humans. We've got this incredibly long-lasting, standardized stone tool technology. Now, the big question, why? Why was the skill so important? Why did it need to endure for so long? What were they up against? Which brings us to Section 3, technology as a shield against chaos.
Yeah, this is really the core insight, the so what of the discovery. Because over those 300,000 years, the environment these hominins were living in, it wasn't stable, not at all. It was incredibly volatile. The research paints a picture of East Africa undergoing constant, pretty dramatic landscape shifts.
We're talking serious climate change, basically. And on a massive scale.
Exactly. Things like rivers completely changing their courses, huge wetlands drying up, lush greener habitats shifting towards becoming dry, fire-swept grasslands and semi-deserts. Now, if you're an animal or any organism specialized for one kind of environment, that level of upheaval is usually catastrophic.
Right. Typically, animals facing that kind of environmental pressure, well, they either adapt biologically over long timescales, evolve different teeth, different fur, whatever, or they have to move, migrate somewhere else where conditions are better.
Correct. Those are the standard evolutionary responses. But these toolmakers, they seem to have pioneered a third way, a uniquely human path, perhaps. Adaptation through technology. They use their tools, this Oldowan toolkit, as a buffer, a shield against the environmental chaos. Instead of waiting for biological evolution, which is slow, they modified their behavior and their interaction with the world around them.
So the consistency of the tools wasn't just about cultural tradition, it was an active survival mechanism, providing stability when the world around them was anything but.
It was like their insurance policy. Think about it. Those sharp flakes were game changers for diet. As old food sources maybe became scarce or disappeared due to climate shifts, these tools opened up new possibilities. The research mentions specifically using them for ripping open animal carcasses, getting access to meat, marrow, high-energy foods, and also for digging up plants, tubers, root stuff that would otherwise be hard to get at. It broadened their menu massively. Ah, okay. So, as the environment changed dramatically, going from wetter to drier, forest to grassland, the technology let them stay put, geographically speaking, and still find food. It allowed them to exploit whatever resources were available in the new landscape. It's like, it's an adaptability engine.
Exactly. It let them access new food and bypass the environmental challenges that might have driven other species to extinction or forced migration. It really is like an evolutionary cheat code, powered by culture and learning, not just genes. Dr. Pauco Rollier put it really well. Tool use meant they didn't have to evolve by changing their bodies. They changed how they dealt with the world's challenges. And this, right here, could be the very root of our oldest, most fundamental human habit, using culture, using technology to steady ourselves against change. This pattern started 2.75 million years ago, with technology acting as this bridge, helping them survive that volatility. Wow. Okay, so if we zoom out, connect this to the bigger picture. This story, it's an incredible validation of something deep in us, isn't it? It really highlights something fundamental about what it means to be human. That maybe right from the very beginning, we're defined by being persistent problem solvers. Faced with chaos, with instability that lasted millennia, our ancestors' deepest instinct wasn't just to run or wait for biology, but to figure something out, to innovate.
That thread of resilience, it seems truly unbroken. It's quite profound when you think about it. Imagine those early hominins relying on a carefully shaped piece of rock as their primary shield against drought, against a changing world 2.75 million years ago. In a conceptual way, isn't that the same fundamental human drive we see today? When we tackle massive challenges like climate change or pandemics or even aiming for space, our species' ability to face crises and keep going seems directly linked to this ability to learn, pass on knowledge, and create tools technology based on that knowledge.
So, boiling it all down, what's the main takeaway here? It seems to be that our human capacity to adapt using technology, it's far older, far more deeply ingrained, and way more central to who we are than we ever really gave it credit for. We were inventors, running a complex curriculum for 300,000 years before we even developed the big brains we usually link with invention.
Absolutely. And that leaves us, and you listening, with a pretty powerful question to ponder, I think. Given that our deepest origins seem rooted in this kind of technological resilience, this persistence during periods of extreme long-term environmental turmoil, does knowing this change how you view our ability, humanity's ability, to face the massive species-level challenges we're dealing with right now? What really stands out to you about that ancient persistence, that ability to keep that knowledge alive for so long? Just think about that unbroken chain, stretching from a sharp flake of stone 2.75 million years ago, all the way to the complex technologies we rely on today. It's quite a thought.